Hello, and welcome to the Leading Sustainable Success podcast. I'm Adam Campbell. In this podcast series, we explore key themes that help leaders to create and sustain success in their organisation. In this episode, we're joined by Kieran Griffin to explore the theme of innovation. Kieran, welcome to the Leading Sustainable Success podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking a lot about innovation, but before we do, for those people who are listening in or watching and hearing you for the first time, perhaps you could give a little bit of background about yourself.
Absolutely. Great to be here. Really exciting. Well, me, I'm, as you can tell, maybe I'm British. Well, I'm also half Irish as well. Mechanical engineer by background, but throughout my career, I've evolved into innovation, growth, leadership, transformation. I spent 25 years moving around the world through engineering, systems and buildings, consulting, executive education as well. And I've lived in the UK, US, China, Sweden, and now Switzerland for the last 15 years. I spend a lot of my time working with people, which is my passion. I love helping people understand internal customer problems, external customer problems. And over the course of my career, I've really cherished the times that in particular, we've been building innovation systems and really thought about the times that the engineering has, crossed over with the people, that has crossed over with the customer, that intersection that helps kind of organizations understand maybe where they need to go and how they need to get there. I really love doing that. I spend a lot of my time helping companies think about how you can move into true innovation away from PowerPoint and Excel.
Excellent, fabulous, thank you. I'm going to look forward to speaking to that. Of course, a relatively new addition to the Telos family, and previously a client.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes. I mean, that honestly, it was, I saw how you worked. I saw you working for, I think it was 4 or 5 years. And I really enjoyed the time that we worked together. And when I saw an opportunity to come and spend some more time with you, it was a great. It felt like I was coming home in a lot of ways. I knew some members of the team, got to know other members, and it was a really enjoyable kind of transition from client to being part of the team.
yeah, and I know in the conversation today, Kim, we're going to be diving in a bit to some of the client work that you're working on straight away around that innovation. But before we do, a question that I'm asking everyone who's coming on the podcast, certainly from the Telos family at least. The title is Leading Sustainable Success. So
Mhm.
what does leading sustainable success mean to you?
And I've been looking at this for a few years now, and I think leading sustainable success, it's really about creating value today, performance today, and tomorrow, and adapting in a way that you can do both at the same time. It's not all about, the financial aspects and stability. It includes people sustainability, the cultural part of all of that, how you bring your leaders with you along that journey, and importantly, and I can't get away from it, that innovation stability, that repeatability that you can go through when it comes to innovating. And I really think about that in the way a lot of companies are running, and most companies are, you have your quarterly performance metrics, you have all of your kind of the leadership, get-togethers, but how you create an environment that people feel safe in, contributing ideas, the way that you allow people to feel like learning is like a continuous part of that, how you get people to feel like experimentation is
Yeah,
is something that they can do and just continuously work with, because when going back to the point, sustainable success, if you don't have that openness of culture, the bringing the people with you, bringing the leaders with you, allowing people to do that experiment, you're not going to have that sustainability. And it's not just about the financial elements, it's about the people, the culture, the leadership, and if you are going to thrive in that long term, I'm finding it's the people who are able to unlearn as well,
Yeah.
because a lot of times you have the past is dictating where your future is going to be.
Yeah.
But if you can have that and you get that right, it's a fantastic place to be. And a
Fantastic.
lot of people I've worked with, some are getting there, some are just at the start of the journeys.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant place to be.
Excellent. And I think people can already see the passion you've got for innovation coming out of this, Kieran. So, kind of moving that onto that. So, what is it? What does innovation really mean to you? And I think you've already described its contribution to sustainable success. But what does innovation really mean?
For me, innovation, it's such an easy word. It quite often when anybody talks about innovation, they think about new products, new technology, but at the heart of it, it goes back to the why, back at the end of your five whys. And innovation for me is all about solving meaningful problems that people have in a better way than they currently have.
Yeah.
And it's not just about technology, it's not just about products. It includes everything that is in the enterprise, from business models to the ways that the customer are interacting with us, the way that we offer our services, the way that maybe even our operations are set up for the customer, for the internal customer as well. And even to the extent of how leaders are approaching the way of working, because what we need to do with innovation, it's all about creating that value, and it's value for the customer, it's a value for the employees, and ultimately, back to the word sustainable, sustainable innovation, it's not just random brainstorming.
Yeah.
It needs direction, governance, back to experimentation. It needs to give people that opportunity to play, but ultimately it needs to be led with customer insight. And that is where the key is going to be. If we can get the right kind of customer insight and understand what those key problems are going to be, you've got a brilliant recipe, because quite often innovation is always linked to creativity.
Yeah.
And creativity alone is not going to get you where you need to be. So innovation for me is it's solving problems, but then leveraging that creativity, execution of an idea, and then adoption of that into the marketplace or into your organization, because you can't stand still anymore. I mean, with the evolution of the technologies that are all around us, things are just moving faster, and you have to be able to understand the customer, apply that into some sort of a system, and get the right creative people around it, the right execution around it, and then how are you going to adopt that as an organization? Yeah. So that for me is innovation.
Yeah. There's definitely not just products in that. It sounds like something that pervade. When you get it right, it can pervade all aspects of the business.
It can, and products are part of that. Products are a great part of that. But it's not just that. And the issue that I sometimes feel and see, and I can share a lot of maybe the do's and don'ts of some innovation in it later, but the way that some people go into customer conversation about innovation, they already have a product in their mind.
Yeah.
And that conversation is led with a silo approach. And they don't listen for real customer problems. They listen for validation that their idea that they have is the correct one.
Okay.
The right kind of conversation when you're trying to think about a customer problem is listening to what problems exist in their world. What is keeping them awake at night? There's probably about 10 things.
Yeah.
And the top 3 things sometimes might not even be in what you believe is your remit to solve, but maybe it is. And if you can take that away and think about it and maybe pull a team around it, maybe you have a way of solving it, or maybe partnering with somebody who could solve it. Because if the problem that you would normally address is number 9 on their top 10 list, they're probably not going to get to it, and they're probably not going to pay for it either.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, innovation should be about sustainable, profitable growth for the company.
So definitely a need to start with customer, and that probably leans a little bit into some of your learning and observations. So obviously, Kieran, you've been involved with this for a while. I'm curious to understand some of the lessons and learning around that in terms of where you see organisations, people getting it right or wrong.
Yeah, it's How long have you got? Let's
As
start
long
with
as
that.
it needs, we can always edit it down, Kieran.
I know, but it varies, and it's all a learning journey. And if people don't get it right now, it's not a bad thing. It's
Okay,
about
so you
learning.
can innovate innovation.
You can
Yeah.
always, because for me, in innovation, it's about learning and it's about failing fast. And if you don't do something right and it doesn't work, and you think, oh, we won't do this anymore, as long as you've learned from that, you're probably not going to do it again. But in terms of the way that people get things right, if you have that deep customer understanding, that's the foundation for me.
Yeah.
If you have a true access into your customer base, and I've seen it work beautifully. You have a customer, you have an account. If you have contacts in that account that stretch beyond the buyer, and you get into engineering or you get into the commercial team, even HR, if you've got that real kind of account management approach, that deep understanding inside and understanding their needs, it's brilliant. It really, really works. I can talk about areas where it hasn't worked as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
but if you get that deep
That's the
understanding, brilliant.
foundation stone.
Get that foundation, but also an understanding that customers are not just the people who give you money.
Yeah,
Thinking of a value chain of customers
yeah,
and who potentially is connected to your world and
yeah,
who influences and who maybe is the anti-champion and champion along the way.
yeah,
If you can get that understanding of those people as well, then brilliant.
yeah,
So foundation is customers.
yeah,
When you're working on an innovation project, you can't just, and again, quite often in a B2B environment,
yeah,
where I've got a lot of my experience, they always throw the engineers at it.
yeah,
Well, maybe not, they're not the right people always to be alone on a project. You have to have a cross-functional group around
yeah,
engineers. If it's a product development type thing, of course, the engineers have to be there.
yeah,
But you need finance involved, you need supply chain involved, you need marketing involved, you need salespeople involved. You need people in that room who are able to ask the different perspective questions that you would not always see from
yeah.
your swim lane that you're in. And I always love the teams that do really well. We use a role in that team called a constructive troublemaker.
Okay.
This is a person who naturally has that kind of question that you weren't expecting, or somebody who's able just
Yeah,
to say, well, what if we did it like this? Or what aren't we seeing right now? So those teams that, and it doesn't have to be a special function of a person. I'll admit quite often finance plays a very good role as a constructive troublemaker, but it
yeah,
can be anybody. Um, that is key. So deep understanding of the customer, cross-functional team. You need leadership to genuinely support the teams and give
yeah,
space, all the way from CEO, exec, all the way down. You've got to give people the space to play and to work, because quite often when you create innovation sprint teams, as we call them, they often are doing their day job as well as the sprint work, and
yeah,
sometimes the day job is the sprint work,
yeah,
but sometimes there's a clash, and the leadership needs to allow people to that space to work. And they do that by maybe redeploying a project elsewhere, giving extra time on a project to be completed to allow the sprint work to be done.
yeah,
If you can do that, and especially when you delegate stuff, it gives opportunities to other people as well, which is
yeah,
really cool. They suddenly they get some extra experience across wider of the team. So you get that leadership supporting is key.
yeah,
What is also key in innovation is when people, they're not spending 6 months doing this stuff.
yeah,
We're talking weeks. I run sprint cycles of 6 weeks or 12 weeks, and in
yeah,
test and learn weeks, test week, learn another week. So test some ideas with customers or test some problems with customers, and then learn what does all of this mean? And always, when you're doing this kind of test and learn, do it in a short space of time, not 6 months, not investing heavily. You're doing these small bets just to see what more can we learn about this given problem with
yeah,
maybe a given solution. Because the other aspect of where people get it right is they stick with that problem space for the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, falling in love with the customer problem
yeah,
before you do anything else. Not falling in love with the solution, that can come later. But
yeah,
if you fall in love with that customer problem and get that right, it's incredible. And
yeah,
if you make sure as well that, and this comes back to leadership, that it's got clear connection, whatever you're doing in innovation, clear connection to the purpose of the company, the strategy of the company. Where does it fit? It's not like an extra thing over here.
Yeah.
It's something that's contributing to the organization. And you've got to treat it as it's not an isolated innovation is not a department. Innovation is everybody's responsibility. So if you can treat it as a like a capability,
Yeah.
brilliant, because then it's a gift to everybody to contribute and to share and to talk about. And if you link it then back to, you know, your purpose, your strategy, it becomes very much a people development activity, just as much as a solution, service, product development opportunity as well. So when they get it right, you get the leadership aligning it to the strategy, you're basing it in your, you know, the customer understanding, you're giving teams space to work, cross-functional team space to work, and you're turning it into this capability, and it's not a department. So that's how they get it right.
Yeah, fabulous.
How they might get it wrong. This is the fun bit, because this is the learning bit more than anything else. How often, I mean, I've been 25 years all around the world. How often do you end up in what I call it innovation theater? You know, you have your workshop, you have your sticky notes on the walls, you have your all the great big ideas. We'll leave a meeting with lots of passion and lots of ideas, and then nothing happens. Because there's no ownership, there's no link to strategy in there. It is just a standalone theater production. It's got to be a part of some sequence of events, and quite often, if we can get it into that kind of routine annual strategic cycle, and when you can link it to the budget cycle, even better, because then you get the money attributed to it. But what you can't do as well is expect any team to magically innovate without that organization support. So back to the point around time, leadership, endorsement. They can't just sit there and suddenly come up with something brand new. They need the time to work with the customers, and you also need the time to fail and get things wrong. And I've seen brilliant teams in my past. You know, they came to me really, really worried that they had a problem that they realized we couldn't really do anything with. It was not something that technology could solve. We thought it was going to be something revolutionary for the industry. It was not there. And they didn't know what to do. And they said, can we recommend that we kill the project? But what does that mean for us? They were worried that they were going to be punished for it. And that's what happens. Punishment, failure punishment really stifles creativity. Instead, what we did with this team, we celebrated them. We even put them forward for an award of how good they were, because they recognized they couldn't pursue it any further. And that team, we disbanded that team, but redeployed them elsewhere to teams that were working, and they were then delivering in execution mode. So we suddenly went from a team that just couldn't do anything, and instead of spending 6 months, 12 months just trying to get something out of it, we stopped it quickly, redeployed the resources, and fueled other teams as a result. That is brilliant. Failing fast is brilliant, but punishing failure, that's where organizations get it really wrong. I alluded to earlier. If we start with the technology and not a customer problem, you end up going down a very, very narrow space. And quite often the opportunity is small. It's not customer led. It might be solving a problem number 9 on the list. And if you don't get that, you're not going to get the buy-in from the customer. You're not going to get a willingness to pay, and you're going to get a very, very low result at the end of it. And what does that mean? Then when the next time comes around to actually coming up with some new ideas, you didn't do so well the last time, they don't trust you this time, and then you don't get the money in the budget for it. And you've got to have, yes, a bit of faith, but you've also got to, you know, demonstrate results. And the best way of demonstrating results is if you can get that customer problem being solved and get that customer buy-in. Then if you're leading with the technology, you're not going to get that.
Excellent.
If you also, sorry, I think I'll stop in a couple of minutes, because there's a couple more things I want to say.
I was just going to signal we'll talk about the technology in a bit, because I want to talk about AI, but carry on.
Okay, we'll
carry on.
but if you have as well, I mean, I've done it. I've made the mistake. I've done it myself. If you put too much governance in, You know, we like
Yeah.
dashboards, we like Excel spreadsheets, we like all sorts
Yeah.
of fun things to demonstrate. Look, this stuff is
Stifles.
happening. Oh my word, it stifles it. It stifles creativity.
Yeah.
It stifles one of my key points that I stress with teams now is, learning is not linear. You're not going to go from step
Mm.
one to step two to step three. It's not. Sometimes you're going to have to take a couple of steps back. I'm working with some teams at the moment, and we started all off at the same. And with two teams are kind of running. We have another team which they've realized they need to pivot heavily over this way. We have another team that's struggling a little bit to get to some customer access. So they're now all in very different places. So there's no way a common governance could structure over them anyway. But if we'd stifle them at the outset, we wouldn't be anywhere where we are now because we allowed them the space to learn and to grow accordingly. And what we have to do as well is, there was so much uncertainty across pretty much every team I've worked with, and in particular the teams I'm currently working with. If you tried to eliminate all of that uncertainty before you started as well, we wouldn't start.
Yeah.
We'd still be 6, 12 months down the line thinking, should we do this? Shouldn't we do this? You've just got to get in and learn and test and listen to a customer tell you, what are you talking about? That's just crazy. We would never entertain that.
Yeah.
Allow that flexibility. Get rid of the governance, get rid of that kind of, focus on removing uncertainty. And I said it, that innovation is not just about the financial aspect. There is a financial aspect to it. It's driving profitable growth. But if innovation is separated away from that, and if it's just this kind of think tank over here, it's this separate little thing.
A test tube.
Exactly. Away from the reality of the business that we're working in, back to my point of delivering value today and value tomorrow at the same time.
Yeah.
They've got to connect. You've got to connect to the commercial reality that is happening out there with your customers, with your business. And one of the key things that I'm just always seeing, a lot of innovation in organizations. Well, a lot of organizations, they want the innovation outcome without endorsing, supporting, and giving space for the innovation behaviors.
Yeah.
And that's why, for me, innovation, it's such a people-driven thing.
Yeah.
There's technology, and we'll come on to that in a second. But without the people element, without the existing, structures in your business, you're not going to get there. So a lot of people get it right, and a lot of people who are getting it right is because they did it wrong first and they've learned. And I think that's the key thing. As long as we're learning, continuously learning, that's the key.
So what I'm picking up from this, Kieran, apart from a framework of C's arriving, I'll talk about that in a second, but just it's that interconnection, connectivity of strategy, culture, learning, all of those things coming together.
Absolutely.
Across all parts of the business. But you've almost created a framework with C's for me: customer, cross-functional, C-suite, concise, short sprints, clarity and connectivity to purpose, capability, not development, and continuity. So
I didn't do that on purpose, but my God, I'm good.
We'll maybe write that.
You got it.
We'll maybe write that after. I do want to bring the conversation onto technology, because obviously every time I look at LinkedIn or open a business press or something at the moment, all I see or read about is AI at the moment. So tell me a little bit about your kind of views and perspectives on innovation applied to the topic of AI. What observations would you share?
I think for me, AI and innovation, the key thing for me is I see it accelerating a number of areas. I see it accelerating things like idea generation, very, very fast research, depending on the tools that you're using, very, very fast research, helping you kind of map a little bit around kind of that customer understanding. And quite often it allows you to kind of create prototypes in kind of the MVP of this world, the minimum viable product, the testing of those type of, we have an idea for maybe a website, let's mock it up on a single page. You could do that individually, or you could get AI to quickly mop something up, but they could do like 7 of them in the space it takes you to maybe do 1. So I think AI really accelerates kind of the ways you do ideas, the way that you can kind of gain that kind of insight and research, and how you can actually maybe accelerate some of the more practical things that you want to do with the customer. What I see it working more as well is it can become a bit of a thinking partner. That I've seen some places use, an agent to create a bit of an AI coach. So before you'd have like several, coaches for sprint teams. Maybe you don't have as many as you did, and maybe you have an AI coach who can challenge you and ask you the different questions. Being pre-prompted the way that you can think, like, is this valid with the customer? Maybe we need to kind of challenge with this supplier over here. What it does, though, it allows, I see it as, you don't necessarily have to use massive teams anymore. You can use sprint teams that are down to 2, 3, 4 members,
Right.
and
Okay.
you can automate a number of things that allows you to, it moves faster, and it allows you can, test ideas maybe a little bit quicker. But my big watch out with AI is that obviously sometimes it hallucinates, and you've got to verify, and you've got to check everything that's in there. It enhances the human, as it is
Yeah.
right now, as
Yeah.
it is right now. It's an additional, support, but it enhances kind of the human judgment, because things like curiosity, ethics, empathy,
Yeah.
that's at least for now,
Yeah.
quite a human,
Yeah.
trait that you need to balance, AI with when you're having some of the conversations within the team, with the customer, sitting in their shoes. You're not always going to get that with
Mm.
AI. It's going to allow you to have some efficiency gains, but you
Yeah.
still need to overlay, your strategic thinking, your empathy,
Yeah.
your ethics, your curiosity over that. What you have to be very careful, for me as well, it should always be supporting customer
Yeah.
centric innovation. It shouldn't be used to cost cut.
Yeah.
It should be, oh, now we've got a great new tool that's going to help us, accelerate quicker, maybe experiment faster,
Yeah.
experiment wider. It shouldn't be like, oh, we can now save half a team. It only costs us, 200,000 instead of 400,000. It shouldn't be like that. The ones that are going to win leveraging AI are the ones that are going to be combining that technology excellence with the human understanding.
Yeah.
And if you get that partnership right, like we work with cobots, the collaborative robots in
Yeah.
factories now, it's going to be exactly like that, just in more
Yeah.
of a business setting. So that's where I'm seeing AI, efficiency gains,
Yeah.
but you have to partner with the human element to get that curiosity, ethics, and empathy in particular.
Excellent. Thank you. Um, Kieran, that's been a really interesting whistle stop tour of the kind of where people are getting it right and wrong. So,
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, as I mentioned at the start of this, relatively new addition to the Telos family, but straight into a client kind of piece of work. So perhaps you could kind of give an overview, a flavour of how you're working with clients who are looking at addressing knotty innovation problems.
I'm spending a lot of time. Well, the first bit is discovery,
Yeah.
and one of my old mentors used to say to me, "You got two ears and one mouth. Use them in proportion."
Yeah.
So I've spent a lot of time listening, and a lot of people are coming to me and saying, "We need to innovate." Okay, then my first question is, well, why? And probably several whys later, because a lot of times they're looking at the new product sales. They're seeing the new product sales are maybe not as good as they could be. They sometimes have a lot of ideas for new products, but the execution is not great. Um, a lot of times, I'm hearing that people in the organization are so far removed from innovation. It's just like there's other group of people over there, and more and more I'm hearing people want to innovate beyond R&D. So this is something
Yeah.
which is good, and I'm feeling that kind of I'm feeling that pull, which is that understanding that innovation is not just products, and it's not just
Yeah.
R&D. And so I'm personally spending a lot of time understanding what that underlying business need really is, and
Yeah.
also importantly, where their maturity is in terms of the customer understanding
Yeah.
and their current portfolio of activity.
Okay.
Because in their current a lot of people I'm speaking to is their current portfolio of activity is quite full.
Yeah.
And they still want to innovate. So they have that already. They've got a lot of activities running.
Yeah.
What do we do with that? What do we do? We're not going to stop it. But what we're also doing is having blended approaches where we say, okay, well, you've got things that's already in your pipeline. Quite often those things are products.
Yes.
And we might have to go back to a little bit of basics, saying, let's take those as they are now.
Yeah.
And let's apply them into a lighter process of innovation, going back to the customer and understanding, where does this product go? Let's understand with the customer their biggest problems in this particular area, forgetting about our solution. And that's so hard. Oh, it's so hard disengaging when you've sometimes spent a year working on something, suddenly you have to take it away. And that is, I see growth in a lot of people in that way as well, because they have to really start to disengage and then go to the customer and talk about their problems. And that's where I'm spending a lot of time at the moment, is kind of going through those current portfolios and trying to see, are these products really customer demanded? Is there going to be a willingness to pay? Is there a market there? Sometimes the answer is yes, of course. This is great. This is wonderful. A lot of times these
and
are
I guess one customer isn't a market either in that scenario.
Oh, no. You need, and quite often a lot of activities are started by the one loud customer saying enough times that they need something, they produce it, and then what happens? Maybe not so many sales. So it's about really getting back out to the customers. And what's really interesting sometimes is it exposes a number of things. It exposes that maybe the product is not solving a problem, that there's no market there. It also starts to expose sometimes maybe that we don't have the access to customers, the right kind of customers that we believe. So the intimacy may be there with, say, a buyer, but when you need to speak to engineering, or when you need to speak to the commercial team, when you need to speak deeper, that account relationship might not be there. So that's really interesting with the clients I'm talking to. They're starting to see that as well. And so starting from, we need to innovate and we need to check our current portfolio, to entering into much more of a commercial view of our world, like, oh, then maybe we need to get a bit deeper into these accounts. And when we enter in this way as well, back to my earlier point, thinking about a value chain, you start to understand how weak possibly you are through the value chain in terms of being able to reach people. So that's one aspect where we have to go back to basics and think, okay, current portfolio, where are we? What are we doing? Let's try and assess, are these the right things to do or not? But then there might be nothing in the portfolio and we're ready to go. And then it's slightly different. Then it's much more of an open conversation where sales people are heavily involved, still cross-functional, we still have people supporting from engineering and marketing. That's when, I'm working with people to really think about, okay, so what are the customer problems we want to be solving? No matter what we do, we start with an exec alignment. So the exec team, back to my leadership point, all has to be aligned. So even if we're doing the current portfolio up to the brand new stuff, you get the exec aligned, you get them thinking about the themes if we're doing more open innovation work. And then we go through a customer insight sprint activity where we are going to be really thinking about, okay, here's our customers. This is the kind of general field we want to work in. It might be, measurements. It might be route to market. Very, very open. And then we start to interrogate customers where their biggest problems are lying here. We then start to formulate kind of some themes. Again, you can use AI to start kind of mapping some of these themes together. Then we need to get to a problem statement. And that problem statement is something that you could then feed into an innovation program, which is then kind of, you feed in the problem, then you think about the solution, you think about the execution, then you need to develop a business plan. But I'll always say, though, when we have these problem statements, it's always got to be a problem worth solving. And that's where I'm spending a lot of my time now as well, really trying to emphasize this point, is that it's great that they've got a problem, but if I'm not going to pay for it, and there's not a big enough market for it, then it's not a problem worth solving. We need to think about something else. So that's where I'm at. I'm still relatively new with you guys. That's kind of where my world is sort of facing me at the moment. Is that kind of the current portfolio? What do we do with that before we move on? And then also now, okay, we have no portfolio and we want to really think about what we want to do next.
But I think that the enjoyable thing, Kieran, of working with you as you're coming new into the business, you've taken that 20 odd years of corporate experience of addressing this into a consulting kind of methodology, if you like, and that's again, it's a real opportunity to learn, isn't it? So
do it's fun because a lot of times in the client who I work with, or their boss, I've been exactly where they are.
Yeah.
So I know the conversations they're having. I know the pain they're having,
Yeah.
the frustrations they have. But I see it now from obviously the outside. I'm able to, again, back to my empathy point. I can empathize, where they are on that journey, and how we have to modify a little bit.
Yeah.
But the conversation is quite different because I've been there and done it with them before.
Excellent. Excellent. As you were talking there, Kieran, again, kind of that one of the things that was coming to me, kind of that, again, moving it beyond R&D, as you put it. This methodology, if you like, of innovation could apply equally to the finance function or the people function or any function across the business, isn't it? Actually, because they've got a customer too. It may be an internal one, but so that innovation process can apply in all parts of the business.
Absolutely. I mean, I will never advertise talk about creative accounting, but financial, the way that they work, the way that they work setting up their systems, the way that they work with their internal customer, it's absolutely valid. Operations. I mean, I had there was one time I was working in an organization, and there was a sprint run, an innovation sprint on how to optimize the operations with their own internal customers around them. And it was amazing. Ideas were flowing in. They created a bit of a competition around it. So, there was a bit of an incentive there for people to fill in ideas, because, that's where innovation can win or lose. If it often fails when there's no incentive, there's no structure, there's no culture, and there's no kind of decision making. If you create a like structure around things, innovation can be applied everywhere. And I can't believe I haven't used this word yet as well so far. The key thing that I've said, how many times have I said the key thing? I think there's many key things, but one of the key things is whatever we do in innovation, whether internal or external, we are going to be holding a lot of opinions about the reality of the world that we're living in. And that word for me, we're holding a lot of assumptions. And whatever we're doing, write those assumptions down. And you create your assumptions log. And what you do with that, you can then start to figure out, is that true or is that false? And if it's true, then okay, but how do you confirm it's true? Well, you speak to people, you speak to a customer, you speak to internal people, you look at some data. Because quite often assumptions can be things that we are telling ourselves to make ourselves feel better about the life around us as well. And if you can start to get people to think about all the assumptions that they're holding about their given activity, given day, whatever, and you start to write them down, you start to really break out that view of the world which is true and which is a story. And if you can do that, that's absolutely magic as well. And that applies no matter what function you're in.
We've added another C to the list, by the way. Challenge assumption.
You're good at this stuff.
I can't help it. Anyway, it's just inbred. Kieran, fabulous conversation and very brief exploration of innovation. I've got one final question to ask.
Okay.
I can imagine from what you've said so far what the answer might be, but if a leader was to coming up to you tomorrow and say, Kieran, we need to innovate how we innovate, what one bit of advice would you give to them?
I like that. I like it. I'm very struggling on the one word aspect of it.
It's not one word, it's one bit of advice.
One bit. Okay. Did you say one bit? I see. That's my assumption I held then. I had the assumption that he said one bit. Okay. Well, I think you have to start with curiosity.
Yeah.
You have to be curious about what is the reality that you're working in, what could be. You can't go in with the answer. You've got to be curious about what the future may hold for you. And to do that, you've got to listen. And that's listening to your own people, listening to customers. And you've just got to get as much of that kind of ground data and insight in as possible to fuel what could be, a fantastic, experimental, courageous journey into innovation. But you've got to start with curiosity. You can't start with anything other than that, because innovation, it has to be part of your culture. It can't be a
Okay.
part of it can't be a department. And innovation won't go anywhere unless you're curious of what might be. And if you can start with curiosity rather than certainty.
So that to me that's about, let's get really clear on what the strategic question is that you're
Yep.
trying to answer through innovation. So that might be something about, which customer problems are going to unlock X amount of growth, or something like that. That sounds like that's it. Start with the question, not the answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you can embed it in customer problems, I think what you've just done there is brilliant. What are the key customer problems that what are the best customer problems for us?
Yeah.
And by best is, so just
play to our purpose, we'll realize our ambition. Yeah.
And you could almost leave it at that, and then then let's interpret it further. It's going to link to the strategy, it's going to link to the employees, it's going to link elsewhere. But the best customer problems that we can face together with the customers are the things that are going to align us closer with the customer. They are going to align us, of course, strategically, with our future intent, and it's also going to align us directly to our growth potential. Because if we're solving the best customer problems, it means that we are going to be driving towards that sustainable, profitable growth that innovation should be, leading us towards.
Kieran, I think that's a fantastic place to leave it. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Excellent. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Cheers.